Good evening. Welcome to West Texas Talk. I'm Anna Rose MacArthur here in the studio with Genevieve Galloway. Genevieve runs Bazaar Marfa. Okay, so Genevieve, you run Bazaar Marfa in Marfa, Texas. You had your first one of the year this past weekend. So what is Bazaar Marfa?
Bazaar Marfa is a flea market. I call it a high desert flea. I pop it up during festival weekends in Marfa. I bring in vendors from other places, and I also invite locals to sell their wares, either handmade things or collected things, vintage items. So it's an open-air flea market where everybody, locals and travelers alike, are invited to sell and to shop.
So how did you get the idea to set up this bazaar?
So Grandma used to take myself and my brothers around to thrift stores and vintage stores and junk stores, salvage yards, other people's yards, just running around the places where we were growing up, which was in Dallas and then also in Georgia and Tennessee, where her family is from. I actually dedicated the flea market, Bazaar Marfa, to my grandmother when I founded it last July. My grandma had an incredible eye for creating spaces out of just anything she could find, which is something that I'm also doing in Marfa with property management and creating vacation rental spaces. It's part of how some of us are getting by in Marfa and being able to make it here. But when I founded Bazaar Marfa, it is one of the things that feels the most true to me, something that I've done that really speaks to me and speaks to my own creative interests and my own creative self. I definitely came to Marfa to force myself into a creative space and to force myself to be the creative person and focus on the creative person in me. And so doing this, it's simple, but it's incredibly fulfilling.
And so how does a flea market and Marfa being a creative space, how do those come together for you?
The creative person in me, I do want to make things myself, but there's also something for me. I'm an arranger. I think I have it on my website. It says, I write, I make, and I arrange things. And that's true. I'm a writer, and I do tend to make things, but I spend a lot of time arranging things. And it's arranging creative projects, it's arranging people, bringing them together. The act of arranging is a creative act for me. And so pulling the flea market together and pulling people in from Dallas and from Bryan, Texas, and these vendors that I have created relationships. And then I'm encouraging people in Marfa to participate. I want to be inclusive. I sent out an email to every Marfa resident I could find and said, do you make something? Do you collect something? Do you have something in your closet that you think you could sell to somebody else? Come to the flea market and let me help you sell it. Like, be a part of this, all of you, every single one of you.
And so when I think of thrift stores, I think of there's an excitement because there's a mystery because you don't really know what you're going to find. And sometimes you find just trash, at least in your eyes, or sometimes you find, absolute gems. You're like, how could someone give this away? And I can't believe I get to acquire it. And then I also think of just being resourceful. There's environmental reasons of like, okay, things have already been produced. Let's just keep reusing them. And then there's economic reasons. Usually they're cheaper. What is it that you think of when you think of thrift stores, or what keeps bringing you back to them?
I definitely enjoy the dig. I enjoy digging and searching and finding the gems that, like what you're talking about. I've certainly heard other people, and that's exactly what they don't like about thrift stores and they don't like about vintage or used items, is that they have to try so hard for it. But for me, the joy is in the trying and in the digging and in the finding.
There's also the sense of history, too, of like this was owned by someone, and who knows if it was owned by someone else beforehand. And so there's like this mysterious heritage behind these items that you're adding to your own, and then maybe you'll pass on. Is that something you think of?
That's actually a super fun thing in Marfa, especially. I was sitting with my back turned to people entering the bar room at Padres, and Lena tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Genevieve, turn around." And I turned around and she said, "Yep, I gave that sweater to the thrift store, and then Susanna bought it, and now you have it, which means that it went through the thrift store 2 or 3 times and has been in all of our closets. And that's a special Marfa experience. So that's definitely happening at the flea market, at the bazaar. But there's things coming in from all kinds of different places because vendors are traveling here as well. And I think that's a lovely part of it, that these things come with a story and that they travel on and keep having a story that keeps going.
So you said that you came to Marfa 2.5 years ago, and you came here to enter a creative space. And before that, you'd been living all over the country. So why Marfa? Why come here?
I did. I popped around a lot. I've lived in Austin, I've lived in Boston, I've lived in Phoenix, I've lived in Brooklyn, I've lived in LA. Popped around a lot of different places and focused on a lot of different things professionally. And I had a 10-year career in nonprofit management, helping families with kids with mental illness. At one point after that 10-year career, I needed to start making some money. And so I sort of jumped ship over into a corporate sector. And while I was able to meet some financial goals in my life, I wasn't using my creative self to feed myself and to exist and to be. And I really needed to do that. So I got laid off in New England, happily laid off in 2012, and took that opportunity and that severance to tell myself, this is it. You're going to go find creative places, and you're going to go find a creative space, and you're going to focus on your creative self, and it's going to be hard. There's been, for me at least, a crisis of confidence in that regard, and I really had to sort of hold myself to it through difficult stretches. I lined up an internship here in Marfa because I wanted to experience this tiny art town, but to be honest, I was incredibly intimidated by it. Having had a 15-year career behind me, I still applied for an internship and came into Marfa in that way. Honestly shy and scared and intimidated by an art scene. And it took a lot for me to decide you're going to stay and you're going to make yourself and you're going to focus on the creative part of you and you're going to be Genevieve. And that is what I'm trying to do. And that is what I'm doing. It feels good to do it here in Marfa.
And so what have you discovered over these 2.5 years?
Marfa is an interesting place to me in that you can't hide from yourself here. The stage is so small, the community is so small, the social structure is so small. I have found a way to hide from myself or parts of myself in my career in nonprofit management, and then the 5 years I spent in corporate management. You can go to your 9 to 5 in the big city, and then you can be your creative, different, eclectic self after hours, and the two may never meet. And here in Marfa, there is no hiding from anybody. And while I find that to be the most difficult thing, it is also the thing that kept me here and that keeps me here. I've spent a life of leaving, in a way, it's traveling and an exploring, but it's also leaving. And it's more challenging for me personally to stay. I want to see the bazaar become what it is in my mind's eye, and it's not there yet.
Are you a different person here? Like, have you discovered new aspects of yourself here?
I'm not a different person. I'm just me from dawn to dusk. Instead of getting to put on heels and a suit, which I actually love to do, and go to whatever day job and perform. So the performance in Marfa is all me. It really all comes back to a definitive crisis of confidence in terms of executing my own creative ideas. I've taken my energy and given it to other people's creative ideas. I've taken my energy and given it to social causes that are very important to me, but I have not taken my energy and given it back to me so that I could create something that I own and am proud of. And Bazaar Marfa is the first time in my life that I have done that. I'm 38. It's about time, so.
Thank you for listening to West Texas Talk. I'm Anna Rose MacArthur here in the studio with Genevieve Galloway, founder of Bazaar Marfa.